Just redid this video because I realized that I think I was going to talk about um, the features are available in Prusa as well as Cura, but I wanted to do an update on some of the things I've been doing with 3D printer. And one of those is really around quality of print. Um, some people seem to favor one slicer over the other. I think the difference between Cura and Prusa is negligible. Prusa just seems to be more efficient on the overall code, the G code that it produces, and I'm liking it more because it has the lovely, you can see me pinch and zoom here, and rock. I'm just using my finger. You probably see it, the dot appearing on the screen as I move it around, and then pinch and zoom. I like that feature. Cura doesn't have that feature. Uh, this is off the jet boat, and it's the nozzle which needs to be printed pretty accurately, especially because you don't want any artifacts oozing, other issues. You can see there's a curve in here, so this has to be very accurate. We don't want any blobs on the top of that. We want this to be pretty much smooth. All these holes to be round and smooth. Effectively, what you see is what you get, is what you're aiming for. WYSIWYG, but printing style. So what you're physically seeing here, when it slices and it prints, is pretty much what that object should be doing without any, you know, of the issues. And that does take a bit of time to learn. A couple of modifiers I've done then. There's a nice feature both Cura and Prusa have called modifier. And you can kind of find it um, under these settings here. If I just click away there, we'll click on this, right? Um, so I'm on the effectively the preview. What I've done is I've added a couple of modifiers. A modifier is saying, well, I want actually to have two modifiers, these blocks here and this block here. You can create different shape modifiers to allow me to define the individual settings when it reaches this block, this zone, if you like, treat that like a zone. I want this modifier to uh, change the uh, bill volume, the infill, the wall thickness, etc. for the specific block and the specific block. Now, why would I want to do that? Well, these areas are prone to cracking when you put the bolt in here, or they're a little bit more fragile. These areas aren't so bad because you're probably using 5% infill or more in these areas. Probably got thicker layers in here. Probably got a top layer of 2 here, a bottom layer of 3 here. So these are already thickened up. You've probably got 5% infill in there. But here you want to give some extra strength in these two portions. So what you can do is you can go and add, under your editing, you can go and add something called a modifier. All right, and what you want to do is you want to add a box, in my case, or a cylinder, or a sphere, or a slab. I've chosen box because it pretty much is going to fit within this realm here, right? Once you add this block, you then can position it, right? You also want to size it. Originally, the block will start off down the bottom here, and you just have to drag it and position it and use the, the Z-axis, the X-axis, the Y-axis to move it around. You can see, I'll just move that back to where it was, but you can see I can do that. Now to set the scale of it, you click in here in the size field, and then you've got the scale. You don't drag these. What you do is you set 10 millimeters or whatever your block size to be, and it will then scale that across uniformly. You can individually set them as well. So you want to set a 10 millimeter block, and that will be fine. And then you position that where you want the block to appear. Yeah, so it's pretty straightforward to do that. And then the next thing you do, once you've done the modifier, is you go and say, well, actually, I want to have this modifier with a different infill and a different layer type, or I want to change its type altogether to be, I want it to be a modifier, a support enforcer, a support blocker. I want this to be a modifier. Yeah. And then with my new infill and perimeters, I'm going to select 15%. Currently it's using 5% for the overall object, but for this specific block modifier, I want to use 15%, one top, one bottom, two perimeters. I think I've got one perimeter in this overall, three on the bottom and two on the top. But for that particular, so effectively top layer here, top layer here, these will have the generic settings, which are here. So these settings are generic for all of the object, but for this box, let me just see, make sure which box we're on. That box rather that's highlighted, I want to have a 15% rectilinear, one bottom, two perimeters, one top. For that one, which is that one, I want, again, the same kind of settings. When I slice this, just wait for that to slice. There you go. And I just rotate that around. I'm going to use the slider. Again, you can use your finger on there as well. Can you see, look, how much thicker it is in these two sections? And if I zoom down there, go through the layers again, it's still showing a thickness in here. And then as I go further down, it's going to go through its normal. But you can see how that block is creating a thicker, more rugged structure. Whereas the rest of this is 5% infill. And down the bottom, I can see my 5% infill. And then my three layers down the bottom there. You can kind of see it there. Yeah. So that's how you do that in Cura. Now let's export the G code. And I'm going to click on this one. So I'm going to say this is the beefed up Prusa mode. I've already created one. What I'm interested though in is to look at the size of it. So what's the size? 1831 kilobytes. All right, so make a note of that. 1831. With the Prusa slicer, the Cura slicer, I can do a similar kind of thing. I can put two blocks in here. It's slightly different. I kind of covered it in other videos, but you would select the entire object. You would come down to here and you would add support blocker. All right. And then after you've added support blocker, you position your block similar to what I've done on the other one. And then you use per model settings. You select, I think that one. You select your settings and you say, I want infill, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, my settings, infill density. Well, I've already done this one. There's no need for me to set additional settings, but it's the same kind of procedure. Again, I slice it. Okay, while that's playing up, is it because I'm gonna Control Z on that. Z, Y. Let's see if I can just force it to slice. Okay, looks like I'm going to go back here and set those settings. So let's do that. In fact, let's just make sure it's all in the right position to start with. Looks about right, doesn't it? Similar kind of level. Looks about level with the other side, maybe slightly bigger block. That's fine. I'm quite happy with that. Okay, let's select the object. Right, there you go. So again, I would select my wall count, my top and bottom thickness, probably need that to be 1. Wall count is 1, 15% triangles, that's okay. Select that one, top and bottom of 1, 15% triangles, that's okay. Let's see if I can slice it now. Please review settings and check your models fit within the build volume. I think something must have moved. Let's see what has moved. Make sure that's sat on the bottom. Sometimes Cura does this. It gets in a bit of a pickle when you're editing. Everything is definitely within the build volume. It's within the size of the build plate. Let's go to preview. Yeah, it's kind of gone into a funny mode. I don't know, since I've flicked back between the two editors. Let's start it again then. Right, let's just Control A, delete, Control O. Let's go and grab the component so you can see me doing it from scratch. Make sure this thing is sat on the bottom, which it should be, because when it creates the brim. And let's go and add some support blocker. So select the whole object, and I want to, so I selected this is support blocker. If I Control Z, do that again, but do it about the middle, about there, and Control Z, try that again. That's more like it. And will it do 2? Yeah, great. So then you can select the object, select move, basically position it where you want to position it. So I want it positioned around here. You should right mouse wheel. Probably want that to go in here. This one here looks about right. Move that down to about there. Just rotate your field of view. Just check they're about level, roughly about the same position. Yeah, looks about right, doesn't it? Then select the object, select that, settings, and then select your, say, top layer for that particular block, your infill density, your infill pattern. You can change with your speed and flow, but go for that. So top layers going to remain as 1. Wall thickness, fidelity, grid. Let's go for triangles. Select settings. I actually want to go for a wall count value, not a wall thickness value, but a wall count value. And I want the wall count to be 2. Similar kind of thing with this block then. I want to select the settings. I want a wall count. I want to choose the top layer. I want to choose the infill density and the infill pattern. So wall count is 1, top layers 1, infill density 15%. I want it to be triangles. That's okay. Double check this one. Wall count is 2, top. That should be 15% triangles. Okay, so similar kind of thing then here, and let's go and slice that. That's better. Yeah. Right, let's go and save to file. And we're going to call this one beefed up overwrite. So it's updated. I'm going to open the folder. See the difference in size? Look, 2458. So there is a difference in terms of code efficiency. This is 51 minutes compared to, let's have a look what it was for this one. Okay, it's interesting. So this one is 1 hour, smaller amount of code. Of course, this is an estimate, by the way. Both these are estimates. You will find when you get printing, um, it all comes down to your temperature, your print speed. Let's go and check the print settings. Retraction speed is 50, because there's probably a difference in, I think, in the speed. Print settings, general, won't be under machine limits. What's the extruder settings, filament settings, 60. I always struggle to find out where the print speed is. There you go. Yeah, it's 60, infills at 55, support material 55. Yeah, I could probably improve the performance. But anyway, the main thing is you can do the same thing. In terms of efficiency of code, well, we can see there's a difference in size between the two slices. I'm growing more. I'm starting to like the Prusa slice quite a bit more. I don't know why. I just find it the way it prints very efficient. I do find the Cura, oddly, is very good at printing TPU, and maybe it's just something I can't see that this slice is doing compared to. So I'm printing small, very, very small TPU bushes. Cura seems to be very good at doing that. No idea why. Whereas if I do select the material here to be TPU, um, generic TPU, I'm not getting as good a print as I am getting in Cura. So that's what I've been learning. Now, the other thing I have learnt is that the print head on the Creality 3D printer Pro I've got, they tend to wear out within a year and a bit. The Bowden tubes will wear, but also the head itself will just start to not be efficient. And you can tell that it's not efficient because you hand feed the material into the head. If it doesn't start coming out with just a bit of back pressure from you pushing through, you obviously release the extruder mechanism lever and you push in, it should just start coming out on its own. If it's not and you're having to push really hard, it's likely you've got some kind of blockage, or the head itself is just, you know, wearing out temperature wise. And so I did replace this with a new one, and I noticed straight away that it just the print quality just improved amazingly. It was a lot better, a lot finer detail, and that I could push it through, not a problem. And also when I pulled out the material, the PLA, it came straight out without backing up inside of the head. Now, what I suspect had been happening is where the Bowden tube goes into the head, you have to make sure it's cut off flush and pushed all the way down to the bottom. Otherwise, what can happen is you can get a small bulb of PLA between the Bowden. Obviously, it's oozing out if it's not flush, and it forms a kind of bubble, little mini reservoir in here. And when you pull it out, you find that the material's got a blob on the end, and that blob is because of where it's gone in here and filled out. So anyway, I decided to replace it, and sure enough, that flushed that gremlin out. So now I can pull the PLA straight out. I don't get any problems with any blob on the end, like a little tulip type blob. The other thing I did is I replaced the extruder mechanism for an all metal one. Not that I needed to, but I thought it'd be a good idea because one of the things that I noticed it was doing was that thing there, that little piece there, which is where you push in your Bowden tube, was not securing fully. And I find these cleats aren't so good at locking on to the Bowden tube. And if it starts pushing back and forth, it's an indication there's something going on within the head itself, like I described previously, that the PLA is not going all the way down to the head. It's actually oozing out between a gap in the Bowden, because obviously you tend to replace the Bowden every so often. So that is critical. And I was getting what I was getting initially. The problem was that the knurl wheel that grips onto the PLA was slipping, and that is very common on the Ender 3D Pro. Apparently, I mean, I only came across it in the last month or so, but it was all down to the fact, from what I could tell, is either I had a slightly, weak temperature. It was, although the temperature was indicating it was 220, it's possible there was a temperature difference. But it's more likely the Bowden wasn't flush at the bottom, wasn't fully flush, and that is critical that it's fully flush. It's also critical that both cleats at either end do retain the Bowden tube and maintain its position without edging out. So if you do see the Bowden tube edging out at either end, it indicates you've got something going on there, and you need to investigate it. So I think it was quite a good idea to upgrade both this and, because it's quite cheap, only £10 for the all metal extruder mechanism, and to upgrade or replace the head. Those two things combined, once I got everything working, I had zero problems with either printing artifacts, very smooth printing. The printing, I wasn't getting any accuracy problems, and yeah, and the slicer, the slicers, what you see is what you get. In other words, what you tell it to print visibly comes out exactly the same. So there's some of the things I've learned over the past few weeks. I hope you enjoyed the video.